Month 5 in the calendar of the Eternal, Month 8, Day 20, 2022. The Lord called my attention to the study in 1 John chapter 5, verses 16 to 18, where it is spoken of death. What is a sin of death? Lord, teach me truly, fully, according to your wisdom, what this is. And the Lord did not wait. This sin of death is something deliberate, something that is conscious, something that was premeditated, is planned, and is continuous. It lacks repentance. It is short of repentance. A kidnapping is planned. A murder, incest, theft, adultery, rape, abortion, suicide. All this is deliberate, conscious. It is carried out and lacks repentance. It is committed with full knowledge and deliberated consent. The idolatry, blasphemy, among others. The sin of death is a disposition of the heart and a perverse attitude, an indisposition of mind that does not recognize personal sin and refuses to leave it. This is an attitude that effectively closes the door to heaven. But if the wages of sin is death, how can there be sin of death and not of death? It was my question, and it is the question sometimes of many. In 1 John chapter 5, verse 16 and 17, there we see this. Then we can ask ourselves some questions like the ones I asked myself. Are the sins of not death inoffensive to God? Are the sins of death the condemnable and the others are overlooked? So does not God hate every kind of sin? According to 1 John chapter 5, verse 18, there we see the answer. The one born of God, he does not practice sin. Oh, beloved, we can all make mistakes and fall into sin, but to keep making the same mistake and believe that God will forgive us, this sinful game is self-deception. There is no real confession and no genuine repentance. Romans chapter 6, verse 23. 1 John chapter 1, verse 9. Psalms chapter 51, verse 17 tell us about this. Pride is the most evil because it despiritualizes the person and in turn deceives, making him believe that he is fully complying with the will of God. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 13 tells us about this and more. Many think that pride and self-esteem are the same thing, and it is not. Romans chapter 12, verse 3 makes this clear to us. Pride is excess of self-esteem with arrogance. I think that I know everything. I have the last word, etc. I always fight to be right. Psalms chapter 10, verse 4 and Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 make it clearer for us. The proud and arrogant always falls. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18 and 19, we can read it there. Pride dethrones God from our life. In James chapter 4, verse 6, and in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 34, we see it. The effective way to eradicate this in our lives, the secret is in Matthew chapter 11, verse 29. Haughtiness, pride, and arrogance are not attitudes that allow us to manifest a Christian character. They prevent us from manifesting a Christian character because haughtiness, pride, and arrogance stand in the way of us not being able to have a Christian character as Christ wants from each one of us. The proud belittles, underestimates, and humiliates his neighbor with gestures and words, and this goes against the principles of God. The Bible condemns this in Proverbs chapter 11 verse 12. Let us remember Romans chapter 12 verse 3, because everything that we are, if there is any virtue in us, is coming from God. So the sin of death lies in knowing how to do what is good and not doing it. James chapter 4 verse 17. That is the sin of death. Oh, beloved brothers, let's analyze this. I have simply given a brief outline of what the Lord led me in this hour to learn. And I thank Him so much, because really, we have all been through this. But many persist and they want to continue. I always thought, David, a man with a heart like that of God, but he was a murderer, an adulterer, among other things. But we are told that David, when he understood that something was wrong, he repented and did not commit that sin again. So later on, he committed others on impulse or ignorance, but he repented and did not fall into those sins again. He continued in a struggle, growing, until God Himself catalogued him a man according to my heart, said the Lord. Oh, beloved brothers, God grant that the Eternal can say that about each one of us. It is my request and prayer at this time that it be so. May the Lord bless us.